Suprememagus, Chapter 31, Kindness and Retribution. Actually, yes, many times. But I always thought those were normal fares for a healer. In the moment he said it out loud, Lit remembered how ignorant he was in the ways of the new world. There are not, Nana shook her head. Listen, little imp. In a few years, you are going to get out of this village and face the world. Not everyone is kind as your parents, and most nobles are not like Count Lark. For the average person, life is hard, most of the time unfair, and hard work means nothing without luck and opportunity. I don't tell you this because I want to scare you. Only because I don't want you to make my same mistakes. You need to wise up, so let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, a mage fallen from grace decided to return to her old village to settle in and forget about her failures. At first, people were scared of her, thinking she would abuse her power and authority to settle old feuds. But the mage was too tired and bitter for pretty revenges. She only wanted peace. So when she became a medicine woman, doing nothing but tending to the ill and wounded for a fair price, the villagers were really happy. And when they noticed that since her arrival, brigands, merchants, and nobles treated the village with much more respect, they became ecstatic. But bad things kept happening from time to time. Since the mage had no interest in playing the hero, the people in the village offered her a deal. They would pay her a certain sum in exchange for their help. Everything was perfect and everyone was happy for a while. Then the villagers, the only ones who benefited from her protection, decided to make a little change to the initial deal. Sure, peace and quiet were doing wonders for the businesses, and the presence of the mage brought so many people from the neighboring villages to get treatment. But that sum each year was a burden to their profits. Not even the fact that the county's most important noble had made the village the permanent seat for the local spring festival was enough to satiate their greed. So, they decided to convince the local farmers that it was in their best interest to help the villagers cover the sum they had agreed to pay to the mage. You may ask, how did they manage to do it? Well, let's just say, not appealing to the goodness of their hearts. They simply threatened the farmers to change the exchange rate of their goods to the point of making their life a living nightmare. And what could the farmers do about it? Nothing. They needed the blacksmith for their tools, the merchant to buy and sell cattle and crops. You can easily imagine the rest. Without the villagers, the farmers were cut off from the rest of the county. By refusing, every single farmer would have to travel for days each year, even to buy a new plow. Not to mention how hard and perilous would it be moving the cattle and the crops to the nearest merchant, all while leaving family and fields unattended. Lit nodded, a ferocious expression on his face. Let me guess. According to the new deal, every time the farmers needed the help of the mage, they would pay a share of the agreed sum. Just like everyone else. When Nana had finished her story, she could read the rage and disgust in the eyes of her disciple. There, Lit. I didn't mean to make you angry. The purpose was to show you that normal people even good people do to each other on daily basis. We are good friends and all, but that until our pockets or families get involved. Then one's own priorities come first. Life is hard for everyone, but for mages it's even worse. Normal people see them as monsters, nobles as something to submit or exploit. But the worst comes always from your own. Even in the magical academy, you will find hidden ranks, hierarchy, and the competition will be tougher than you can imagine. The pressure both families and teachers put on those poor kids quickly turns them into ferocious beasts. They get measured, judged, and looked down upon for every mistake they make. Social status, wealth, talent, the more they have, the higher the expectation from them. Lid was starting to get confused. So, do you want me to go easy on them? To don't judge hastily? To try making friends rather than enemies? He was inwardly scoffing. God forbid it. The very opposite, Nana yelled in desperation, flapping her arms like a hysterical bird. I already told you, you need to wise up. Don't fall for the nice act someone performs. How do you think they will treat a dirty poor country pumpkin? How do you think they treated me? At first, you will easily make friends with the students from the lower classes, but as soon you reveal any talent, you'll be surrounded by only two kinds of people: those who want to destroy you and those who want to suck up to you. Stay away from the former and even further from the latter. Otherwise, you'll end up like me, naively believing to have lots of important friends until you make one single mistake and they pile up on you like everyone else, leaving only scorched earth around you. When she finished talking, Nana looked really tired and bitter, staring at the floor with watery eyes. She seemed to have aged about 20 years. Lid pondered for a while on her words before giving her his answer. I appreciate the thought and will treasure your words forever, but I also hope you'll understand that your story kind of pisses me off big time. So here is my plan for the immediate future. When Anna finished listening to Lid's idea, she laughed heartily, going back to her old snarky self. That's what I'm talking about, good boy. I am finally starting to rub some good sense on you. You have my permission, but do it only in my absence. It would be bad for my revenue otherwise. If anyone complains or tries to do something funny, I'll cover for you. In the following months, Lid had to prove time and time again his magical skills as a healer before Nana gave him a Tier 2 spell book to learn from. This allowed him to expand his official skill set and be recognized by the people of Lutia as a true healer. Lid was finally able to enact his plan. Nana wasn't always at her home office. Sometimes she had personal business to attend, but most of the times it was because she had to do house calls for patients that cannot be moved. During those times, Lid was in charge of everything. Those who could afford to would wait for Nana to return. Lid was still 6 years old after all. He didn't seem trustworthy enough to put someone's life in his hands without Nana's supervision. But emergencies couldn't be planned, so there was always someone desperate enough to come for his help. His first real patient ended up to be Lukach, Rizal's youngest brother. He was just a toddler, so his mother Lisa had a terrified expression when she brought him in. Lukács was crying desperately, his left arm purple and swollen, bent in a natural angle. Lid had even finished pulling the curtain to give them some privacy that Lisa laid Lukács on the bed and started to beg for Lid's help. "It's all my fault. I'm so stupid. I was cradling him in my arms while preparing lunch when he started squirming and fell. Can you please help my baby?" Lid quickly waved his fingers into a venire ratu. A small wisp of light danced around the baby before penetrating his chest. The light spread it to all his body, becoming dimmer around his chest and left arm. Immediately after, Lid faked a venire lacat. Guided by his willpower, the light magic first dulled the pain, then it made the bone fragments reattach themselves to the rib cage and the arm. Lid used his invigoration breathing technique on the baby, using the imaging it provided him to make sure that the bones were perfectly healed and aligned before interrupting the spell. He had a broken arm and cracked ribs, but now is good as new. Lukács was still crying, but now he was moving both arms, his skin pink and with no traces of bruises. Lisa sighed in relief, taking Lid with a deep bow before handing him the money. It was Nana's usual fare, 4 copper coins, enough for a family of 4 to eat well for one day. Lid took only 2, what she would have paid without the village protection tax. Seeing that she was confused, Lid whispered, "I know about the deal with the villagers, and I'm not Nana. I protect no one. Also, us farmers need to stick together. Am I right? Please keep your lips sealed about it. Otherwise, the next time I will be forced to ask you for the full price." Lisa was shocked, her eyes watery. She did not know what to say. "Then can I ask you to check my leg too? It hurts from a while, and the pain is not getting any better over time." "Is that how the little Lukács managed to slip away?" Lid asked. "Yes. A few weeks ago, I took a bad fall while repairing a hole in the roof. At first, it didn't hurt much, and with a baby, we could not afford a visit for every small thing." Lid used invigoration again, using the injury detection spell as a cover. "Damn it, her leg is badly cracked. It's a miracle she was still able to walk without a limp." After healing her, Lid was conflicted about taking the rest of the money. He could see Elena in her. All the sacrifices his family had made just for keeping Tista alive were always vivid in his memory. Lid couldn't avoid empathizing with the daily struggles his neighbors had to face every day, perceiving them as real persons like him instead of diminishing them as trash like he always did those he killed in the past. Luckily, Lisa took the choice for him, handing the money and opening the curtain before he could say a word. "What a proud woman, truly deserving my respect. Next time she comes, I'll perform the healing while checking up the wound, so she won't get to pay." Those 4 copper coins were the heaviest Lid's hand ever held. Lisa's family would have to skip a meal or two to cover for that expense. From that day onward, Lid would do the same thing for all the farmers, always prompting them to silence. Soon, his reputation grew wildly outside the village borders. Inside those same borders, though, things were quite different. On another occasion, when Nana was called away, another kind of patient walked in. It was Rankin, merchant and richest man in the village. bargaining while carrying his son on a makeshift stretcher with the help of one of his assistants. "Nana, where in the nine hells is that wretched healer when you really needed her?" "She is away at the moment." Lid moved forward, making way for the stretcher. The boy was around 15 years old. His black hair stood out on his pale face. He was bleeding from his leg, despite the wound was tightly wrapped up. "Where is she?" Rankin yelled. "The man repairing the Cullen Bridge had an accident. She will be back on the afternoon at best." "You idiot! Can't you see my son is dying? I do not have that much time." Lit snorted in annoyance. "If you have to yell and be rude, that's the door. If you want me to take care of him." Lit extended his right hand while pointing with the left at the sign on the wall that said, "Payment up front, no refunds." "Paying you? What are you for?" "Almost 6.5. Again, if you aren't going to pay, make space for real clients. If you want miracles, feel free to pray. But do it outside." Lid's tone was stone cold. Okay, Rankin gave up. "Here is your goddamn 4 copper coins." "8. Lid stopped him before he could take the money out of his pouch. "That's clearly a deep wound. Required 2 tier 2 spells, if not even a tier 3. Either way, the price is set to 8 copper coins." Lid pointed to another sign stating the price. "Check up. 1 copper coin. Tier 1 spell, plus 1 coin. Tier 2 spells, plus 3 coin. Tier 3 spells, plus 7 coins." "But those are Nana's prices. You are not Nana." "Really?" Lid mimicked his master's snarky tone. "What gave me away? The age? The height? The gender? You are really perceptive, worthy of a merchant." Rankin was choking on his own anger. Such an arrogant little brat. "I meant that you shouldn't ask so much. Didn't your master tell you about our agreement?" Lid just pointed to the end of the second sign, where "no discounts ever" was written in big red words. "Don't you have a heart? How can you ask so much? You are so young and inexperienced, after all." In all his years as a merchant, Rankin was proud to have never overpaid any product. He was determined to get a discount at all costs. "I could argue that I just don't think you ever gave a discount to someone just for pointing out your age or likability. Also, which one of us here is bargaining on his own son's life? I doubt all healing magic in the world would do him any good once he bleeds out." Finally, remembering about his beloved guard, Rankin finally paid the fee, letting Lid do his job. "What happened?" Lid asked after using Venerera to couple with invigoration, sensing a deep cut wound that missed the femoral artery by an inch. This blockhead and his idiotic best friend had the brilliant idea of practicing their swordsmanship with real swords. That's what happened. "He lost a lot of blood," Lid said after completely healing the leg. "Keep him at rest and make him eat rare meat." Later that day, when Rankin returned to complain to Nana about her disciple, she laughed hard in his face for a whole minute before shutting her door in his face. Suprememagus, Chapter 32, Merits and Trust. 2 more years passed. Lid was now 8 years old. During that time, he had mastered all the spells contained in Nana's books, which brought his official skill set to the most common tier 3 spells. Books about superior tiers were extremely expensive, and Nana had no interest in acquiring them. She had her own grimoire after all. The books she bought over the years were mostly for display, to show her clients what they could purchase. But while his skill in fake magic stagnated, Lid used those years to deepen his understanding of true magic. His grasp on its profoundness and foundations had improved greatly. By practicing true magic every day as a healer, he had gained such fine control on both light and darkness magic that he had finally acquired the necessary skill to permanently get rid of Tista's congenital condition. The problem was that despite of his efforts, his manacore was not strong enough to perform the treatment Lit had devised. During those years, he had used assimilation whenever he could, making his manacore going through multiple cycles of expansion and compression, turning it from deep green to bright green. But it was still green. Lit's impurities had yet to reach the mana core, and until that happened, both his mana and body would not undergo true qualitative changes. He had reached a bottleneck and had no idea how to overcome it. Solace, too, had changed quite a lot. She was no more limited to her pebble form, but could actually turn into any shape while retaining the same overall mass. That allowed Solace to take the form of a smooth stone ring that Lit wore on his right middle finger. When she asked him why a ring on the middle finger, Lit replied with an odd short poem related to a green ring of power. It was something related to his childhood, of which he was really fond of. Along with some of her power, Solace had also regained a new function, something that Lit called Soluspedia. It was another pocket dimension, but specifically crafted for books and any means to store knowledge. All the books that Lit stored in Soluspedia he could consult with but a thought. For example, by storing his grimoire, he didn't need to memorize anymore the magic words and hand signs for the fake magic spells he had learned. Lit still had to practice the hand signs and pronunciation, but he had only to think about what he needed to remember and everything to the smallest detail. The same applied for maps, herbals, and bestiaries. Lit had given almost everything he had earned as a healer to his family, allowing them to have a much easier life and accumulate a decent dowry for Eliza and Tista. Whatever he kept for himself, he would use to buy the most detailed compendiums he could find about the most useful topics, like law, court, etiquette, and even a vocabulary. As long as they were in Soluspedia, Lit knew them inside and out. What made him inwardly gloating was the fact that he could buy even those items that were almost crumbling or defective, resulting to be highly perishable. That wasn't a problem for him. Just like for the pocket dimension, they would be frozen in time and hence potentially last forever. After his 8th winter ended, Lit received a call from Count Lark on Nana's communication amulet. That even took him by surprise. The Count had never contacted him before. Having had plenty of video calls and jobs interviews on Discord and Scope back on Earth, he was familiar with that kind of meeting. Lit bowed deeply as a salute while cupping his fist. Dear Lit, you are always so polite. No need for all the formalities. You are among friends now. Count Lark had a convivial and friendly demeanor, making him seem more like an uncle calling his nephew rather than a lord. Count Lark, to what do I owe the pleasure of this call? Lit looked at Nana standing beside him in search for approval. She nodded while staring at the magical hologram of the Count. You have accumulated quite some merits. I wanted to know if you plan on using them. Merits were something that anyone who contributed to the welfare of the kingdom would receive and could be exchanged for privilege or commodities. A convict could have his sentence shortened by serving in the military and earning merits. A farmer could get more land for free. A scholar could get recommendation for a government job. Merits? Lit was taken aback. I didn't do anything to earn such things. Quite the contrary, dear Lit. Every year I receive hundreds of commendation letters from the farmers and their families about the outstanding job you are performing as a healer. Since Lit has started to give treatments for half the price to the farmers, they would wait for Nana to leave the village before going to get medical care. Nana knew it and did not care. They still needed her for emergencies, and the house call extra fees covered whatever profit she may have lost. A letter counts for earning merits? Lit asked, still confused. One letter, no, but dozens, hundreds of letters, all about the same person for a prolonged period of time. Of course they do. Do you have anything in mind the kingdom can help you with? Lit pondered for a while. Why accessing the law book in Soluspedia, more land was suicidal. His family was already stretched thin, and they cannot afford hired help. The kingdom would not trade merits for money. But Lit could still get the next best thing. Do I have enough for my family to be exonerated from taxes this year? Count Lark dropped his monocle from the shock, the mouth ajar. Taxes? Your family still pays taxes? Yes, we are law-abiding citizens, your lordship. Lit was almost as confused as the count, but with a better poker face. I'll flay my accountant alive. The count jumped off his chair, his face red from anger. I told that incompetent fool to exonerate your family since the day Lady Nerea took you under her wing. I swear to the gods, I'll fire that man with such a bad reference he will never find another employer. Lee tried to calm the count down. Maybe it's for the best. I'd prefer to be exonerated because of my merits rather than for being a magician in training. The count sat back down, a perplexed expression on his face. Why? The result is the same, and you will get to keep your merits for future needs. It may seem just a matter of semantics, but it's not, Lit explained. In my family, if my family gets exonerated, sooner or later it will come out, and what happens next will depend on the reason why we got it. If it's because of my status, in the eyes of the community, it would be an unfair privilege. That could generate envy and grudges, and in such tight community, it could prove to be toxic. Help and support from the neighbors are of paramount importance for a farm, and I will not stay here forever. If we were exonerated because of my merits, instead, it would be something that community has bestowed upon me as a sign of gratitude for my good deeds. Being able to somehow repay their benefactor would make them feel happy and prevent them from harboring ill feelings. During all the explanation, Lit was inwardly crying out of joy, congratulating himself about purchasing the vocabulary. I can finally talk like I used back on Earth. The inability to express myself correctly has always been such a burden, he thought. Magic is indeed the supreme form of art. Count Lark nodded in agreement. Only a magician can be so wise, despite being so young. I am honestly impressed. A dragon whelp is still a dragon, after all, Nana chimed in. The boy is not only wise beyond his age, but also is blessed by the light. He is talented enough to have already inverted his own light spells. Lid's skill as a healer is almost at the same level I have back at his age, and he even created some cosmetic spell for his sister. She has the fairest skin I have seen in my whole life. This is just between us, of course. Lid was smiling and nodding, but he was actually scared to death. Nana seemed to have seen through some of his deception. Wonderful, just wonderful. The Count jumped off his chair out of joy, losing once again his monocle. Thanks for your trust, Lid. I will keep your secret with me at all costs. After the call ended, Lid stared at Nana, unable to express his questions out loud. She laughed out tauntingly as usual. Don't be so shocked. I'm a mage too, after all. When some of your patients came back for a second opinion after describing me their injuries, I was bound to discover the truth. Some of those wounds were supposed to be beyond your skill. As for your mother and sister, you just overdid it, little imp. Whatever you did made them too gorgeous. I commend you for doing it slowly and over time, but whoever knows a thing or two about magic would suspect something. As for the Count, he would notice. Once Rina first and Tista later take part in the Spring Maiden contest. Or do you think he has a corns instead of eyes? It's better to play it this way. Lark is a honest man, the best noble I have ever met. If he thinks he has your trust, he will do his best to uphold it. You are still his precious pet project, after all. I doubt he would risk to lose everything he had invested so far for such a trivial matter. Lid could do nothing but agree. Master, you do not trust anyone, do you? Nana snorted. I barely trust myself. Besides, I am the only one who always fought for my best interests. Lid bowed deeply, his fist cupped. Master, your disciple thanks you for your guidance and help. I will take your words to heart. In the following days, Lid could not stop blaming himself for making such stupid mistakes. Damn it, always so full of myself. I need to stop thinking I am always the smartest in the room. I can't keep screwing up on the small details. In the long run, it could be proved to be fatal. Having such a bitter and cynic master is a blessing in disguise. We are basically two peas in a pod. She will suspect nothing, and I have to keep it that way. Having her by my side can help me grow as a mage and protect me from my own stupidity at the same time. Aside from that, Lid's family got exonerated from the annual fees thanks to his merits, and as he predicted, that caused only joy and happiness in the neighbors. It had happened thanks to them, after all. It was a slow day at Nana's house office when two hunters barged in, bringing on their shoulders two more hunters covered in blood. A magical beast! The hunter in the lead shouted. A magical beast is rampaging through the town's woods. Please, you have to save my men. That monster almost ripped them apart. Suprememagus, Chapter 33, Hunter and Prey. The people in the waiting room made space for the hunters, while Nana and Lid quickly dismissed their previous patients, leaving the beds free for the wounded men. They were so desperate that no one complained about Lid's age or diminutive stature. Before any of the two hunters could say anything, both healers spoke as one. "Close the curtains and let me do my job." They performed readersecho, but rather than to find the cause of the affliction, which was laid bare in front of their eyes, it was meant to check if there was a sliver of hope saving them. They didn't even have time to activate invigoration before noticing that the woman was already dead. He tried nonetheless, but there was no mana flow to manipulate, no life force to enhance with light magic. "I'm sorry," Liz said, closing the dead woman's eyes. "She was already dead before you got here." Before he could continue with his bedside manners, Nana yelled to him, "Get here, quick! We can still save this one if we work together." Lit rushed to the other bed, positioning himself at the man's feet, while Nana moved behind the head. They both needed space to operate at their best. Nana was right. Invigoration could still feel a mana flow despite it being weak. The hunter's wounds were very deep. Lit doubted that fake magic could help him. Fake healing magic would spread to the whole body before focusing on the injury, and that caused it to need a few seconds to take effect. Even worse, the spreading and focusing process would cause the spell to lose some of its effectiveness. True healing magic, instead, would directly affect the wound. Thanks to invigoration, Lit was also able to pinpoint where to send the light mana with surgical precision, maximizing the potential of the spell. Nana's specialty is not like magic after all. If she called me, it means that she hopes my personal spells can save this man. For a moment, Lit hesitated. He would have loved to have time to ponder about the risk-reward ratio of that scenario. He couldn't care less about the life of a stranger. He was much more scared of exposing his secrets, losing everything in the process. Screw it. Sooner or later, I'll have to reveal my spells. I want to believe in Nana and give all this blessed by the light crap a go. Play scared, die scared. Lee started performing quick hand signs, mixed with ninja hand seals he remembered from an old movie. He had prepared that choreography since the last conversation with Count Lark. Venire escla. The light magic flows straight through the hunter's blood vessels, repairing them and stopping the blood loss. With Nana keeping his condition stable, Lit was able to bring the hunter to the point where fake magic could save him. After that, he had to lean against the wall and slide down the ground. Lit was exhausted. He had never attempted something that required so much focus and mana for a prolonged time. Damn, my stupid green manacore. If it was already cyan, maybe I wouldn't be forced to leave halfway through the procedure. Luckily, Nana took all the credit for the success, relieving Lit from any possible question about his unknown spell. After taking her 40 copper coins, she warned the hunt leader. "He is alive, but barely. I don't know if we will make it or not. I can even assure you a full recovery. His injuries were too deep. We did the best that we could." 40 copper coins? Almost half silver coin, and that's all you have to say? A bunch of ifs and wishful thinking? He yelled. Nana clearly understood that the man wasn't really angry with her or Lit. He could still not accept the loss of one, if not both, of his friends. Yet she did not care. When it came to anger, Nana was second to none. She had been scapegoat for others' misbehavior enough to last for a lifetime. "Listen to me, young men, and listen well. I dare you find any village that hosts not one, but 2 healers capable of casting tier 3 spells. If you want certainties, go find Krishna Manohar, the god of healing. He lives in the White Griffon Academy, just 500 kilometers from here. And now, get out of my house before I make you." Even a grieving man knew that to further antagonize a mage whose eyes were brimming with power and of whose voice generated wind blows was plain suicide. The two survived as hunters could only comply. While Nana was clearing the blood spattered around the room, Lid had managed to use invigoration enough to recover some of his strength, so he followed them outside. Drown Woods was too close to his house for comfort. "Sir Hunter, please wait." They were already halfway towards the tavern. The hunter's leader really wanted to vent his frustration on the little pest, but he had regained enough of his cool to admit that the kid was blameless. If anything, he had contributed saving the life of his little brother. That and he was still scared shitless by Nana. "No need for honorifics, young man. My name is Eckhart Longran, and this is my sworn brother Fleck Hiroshia. My name is Lit." The three men bowed to each other. "The man whose life you saved is my little brother Otum Longran. If I can do anything to return the favor, you just need to say the word. Could you please tell me more about this magical beast?" Eckhart shivered for a moment, his eyes closed by the fear and that memory generated in his heart. But he was a great hunter who had danced with death countless times. With every passing second, he was recovering both his courage and spirit. "It's a huge beak. Do you know what it is?" Lit nodded. According to the bestiary in Soluspedia, a beak was a bear that had evolved into a magical beast. They were in tune with earth magic, in rare cases also with fire magic. It all started around a month ago. The farms on the east sides of the Drown Woods were being attacked by mad beasts. At first, it would just slay some cattle before returning to the woods. But then, that harpy of Banneresrat put a huge bounty on the pig in hoping to avenge his mad son. She believes he had fallen prey to the beast months ago. Rat, Lee thought. The name sounds familiar. The psycho that tried to rob you of your bunnies, Solus reminded him. And that was the beginning of the end. After slaying some wannabe hunters lured by the promise of easy money, the beak got a taste for human flesh. From that moment, he started to hunt down his pursuers with elaborate traps. When we understood how smart the beak is, it was already too late. We managed to get away only because he was too engrossed in his last meal to chase us. Lit bowed again. "Thanks. I live near the woods, and your information may have just saved my family. Consider your debt settled." Before he could turn around, Eckhart grabbed his shoulder. "I have been long enough in the business to recognize a fellow hunter when I see one. Listen to my advice. Don't go after it. That beast is unnatural. Not only is smart and cunning, it also moves at an unbelievable speed. No matter how fast you run away or chase it, it keeps switching places, like a ghost. I know it sounds stupid, but I believe it to be a vengeful spirit." Lit thanked him again before going back to help move Autumn in one of the tavern's rooms and to clean the blood on Nana's floor. When he finished, Nana handed him 20 copper coins, half the fee. "Go home and rest. You really are talented in light magic, but that spell is too draining for you. Use it only in cases of emergency." Lit nodded, but before going back home, he needed to purchase some things. He kept discussing the matter with Solus the whole time. Facing such a monster without more than one plan and enough preparation was idiotic. After warming Celia, he spent the whole day resting and using accumulation. In a life or death situation, even a small power-up could make the difference. That night, he slept for the first time in 2 months. Lid wanted to be at his peak condition. He wasn't willing to take unnecessary risks. He woke up before dawn, leaving a note for his parents. He then wore his brand new leather hunter set with metal protectors for the forearms, shins, and heart, his last line of defense in case everything else failed. Once outside, after checking there was no witness, he casted the Soaring Hawk spell and took flight. The Tranwoods was too big and moving on foot was too slow. Using both his live vision and Solus' mana sense, he started looking for his prey while moving near the top trees. It didn't take long to find it. The beak wasn't even trying to hide. Lid could trace it thanks to the bear claws marks on trees and rocks until he found it eating a deer. So much for smart and cunning. How the heck can he still eat? It should have filled his belly many times already. Lid thought, nevertheless, let's see if I can kill it nice and easy. The beak was on the ground while Lid was in the sky, the distance between them about 30 meters, well within the spirit magic's range. Lid sent a huge wave of mana, meaning to snap the beak's neck in one go. The beak instinct was sharp. Even if it was still unaware of the new hunter, it could feel that something was off. It infused his whole body with earth magic. So when the two mana flows clashed, the spirit magic was diminished to a neck rub. Damn it! Again? Just like the Rai. It seemed that magical beasts are able to use fusion magic to some extent. Solus commented, "No doubt, Sherlock. And what's worse in that fusion magic is spirit magic's bane. It can disrupt my mana flow, making it useless, but that stands only for direct attacks." Having his first plan failed, Lid hid behind the tree while moving away from the beak. Casting spells in midair still required too much effort. He also wanted to keep his ability to fly a secret from his prey. Once on the ground, he took a roundabout path towards the beak, using float to not make noises and a subtle dark aura to cancel out his smell and aura. When Lid found the beak again, it was still sniffing the air, looking at its surrounding. Lid moved right behind its back before unleashing a lightning as big as the crouched beak. It had no effect, aside from angering the magical beast and blackening some of its fur. Damn it! I would have never suspected that earth fusion could shield from lightning. The beak roared its challenge, standing tall on its legs. It was an enormous beast, at least 4 meters tall, with a weight close to a ton. Its fur was deep brown with shades of green, and its green eyes were staring at Lid with malice. Too big for comfort, Lid summoned a strong wind, hoping to take advantage of that unstable position to topple the beak and prevent it from charging ahead. The beak channeled even more earth magic, becoming heavier, while digging deep into the ground with its claws. It managed to return back on its four, now standing 1.6 meters tall at the shoulder. Supreme Magus, Chapter 34, Unbelievable Speed. Leeds and Solus' minds were spinning at a full gear, but for entirely different reasons. What if magical beasts are the primordial true mages? What if human mages learn true magic by watching the magical beast hunting, like Chinese martial arts derived their moves from Earth's animals? Solus pondered in amazement. What can I do? I just revealed my trump card for nothing, and my fusion magic is useless, since if that thing closes in, it needs only one hit to rip me in half. Not to mention that air, earth, and spirit magic would probably be useless against it. I am only left with light, dark, fire, and water magic. Lit trembled in fear, but his body was ready to move, his mind never giving up on life. The beak changed through its own shield, intending to make things up close and personal. Lit reacted promptly, using air fusion to gain speed and keep their distance in check. You may truly be immovable as a mountain, but you sure can keep up with someone fast as lightning. Yet the two enemies' speed was the same. The beak was indeed heavier, but the difference in physical prowess was enormous. Not to mention, they were both slowed down by trees, rocks, and undergrowth. Lit felt reassured noticing that the beak couldn't close in, since he could still resort to fly as a desperate measure. Unbelievable speed. This is fast, but not that much. Eckert and his men were either too scared or hallucinating. The game of tag went for a while, with Lee throwing ice spears whenever he could spot an opening, and the beak using rocks projectiles trying to shoot him down. Lee knew that bears weren't supposed to smile, but on the beak's muzzles he could clearly see a smirk, sometimes even emitting a har sound. Is that a laugh? Is that bear actually just having fun? While running, Lit moved the fight to his private clearing. He had finally found the path to victory, but he needed to have both hands and legs free without worrying about tripping on roots or pebbles. Also, the river Philo flowed nearby, greatly enhancing his water magic. Not having to conjure it anymore, Lit could focus only on the manipulation aspect. The beak moved forward slowly and triumphantly. It knew the prey was now cornered. In front, there was only raging river, while the beak was plenty capable of cutting off any other escape route. But soon it noticed that something was off. Not only the smell of fear was gone, the prey had ceased to run, standing firm with the river at his back, watching the beak's every move with defiant eyes. The beak slowed down even further, trying to suppress its overbearing bloodlust and looking again at the surroundings. Suddenly, it remembered about all those dangerous ice spears, realizing it was a trap. But it was too late. It had already got too close to the river. Tendrils of water grabbed its leg, trying to drag the beak in the water. The beak reacted promptly, making tendrils of earth envelop his legs and body, stopping the water in tracks. It knew it could not play only on the defense, so it fired a barrage of stones against the prey. Lit didn't move an inch from his spot, either dodging the rocks or using his own earth magic to deflect those he could not avoid. It soon became a war of attrition, about whose mana would run dry frost. After a few such exchanges, Lit infused himself with fire and earth magic, performing a roundhouse kick to send a huge stone back to the sender. The beak didn't miss that anomaly. The prey had never done such a thing. It was clearly a deception. As soon as Tom came near enough, the beak deflected it with a flick of a claw, using earth magic to avoid touching it. That way it noticed that right behind the rock there was a dense blank mass, Lead's plague arrow. The bee followed its instinct and tried to dodge that slow bullet, but its own tendrils of earth were keeping it stuck in place. Before the bee could summon any sort of magical protection, the plague arrow had hit his mark straight in its huge chest. Pain started blinding the beak, that became unable to notice Lead closing in while shooting 6 more plague arrows, the first to the chest again, the easiest target to enhance the crippling pain. Then he followed, striking the forelimbs once to prevent the beak from fighting back, the 6th and last one to the head, almost at point blank for the kill. It all happened in a barely 3 seconds. In that very short lapse of time, the standstill has turned into a victory for the prey, and that saved Lead's life that day. As soon as Beak let out an agonizing cry, a second one, even bigger, came out rushing from the woods. It wasn't fast. There were 2 of them. That's why they could play the hunters like a cat with a mouse. Lead used air fusion to stay away, keeping that distance the same he previously had done with the other beak. Luckily, the second beak didn't seem interested in pursuing him, and started to lick its partner affectionately. From its size, it should be a male. The only notable difference is that his fur has shades of black instead of green. No wonder the hunters weren't able to tell them apart. Solus remarked, "You better make use of the time to replenish your mana. We don't know what it's capable of." Lit immediately used the invigoration breathing technique, letting the world energy replenish his lost mana and washing away his fatigue. Thanks to the good night's sleep, invigoration effect was at its peak, and it would not take Lit longer to recover. After all, his body was in perfect condition. Only his stamina and mana had been consumed during the fight. "Filthy human! How dare you kill my spouse?" the beak spoke. Lit had no time to be surprised, so he kept his breathing rate steady, aiming to stall as long as he could. "Wow, you talk. I didn't know bears could talk." "Lowly maggot, I am not a bear. I'm Mirtu, the new king of the woods, and she was my queen, Gerda." "Sorry, your majesty, but if you wanted to live happily ever after, you should have respected my turf. I don't care what you do on the east side of the woods, but the west side is mine. Not to mention that I know a rye that could refute your claim." "A rye?" Ertu moved away from the carcass, putting enough distance from the river to be safe from the men pup tricks. "You mean that weakling? The mutt is as good as dead." Itu grinned while slowly moving forward. "Don't come any closer," Lit ordered. "If you leave now and promise to never return, we can close it here. Otherwise, one of us will have to die." "Her, her, her," Irto laughed. "You will not die, murderer. I will just rip off your legs and arms. Then I'll follow your scent back to your burrow and will devour your family alive in front of your eyes. Only then we will be even." Lit dropped the act like a live grenade. "I never intended to let you walk away alive from here. I only had doubts about how much to make you suffer. Thanks for clearing them up for me." "Such an arrogance for a weak man pup. I will not fall for your trickery, like my poor Gerda. I have watched the whole time. The only reason you are still alive is that she loves so much playing with you, Vernon, before beating your head off. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have indulged her so much. If I had killed you back then, she would still be alive. Ertu roared, getting even closer. Lid had already fully recovered and some more. If you want to so bad apologize to her, let me send you to the other side. Despite all his provocation, Ertu remained calm and collected, always keeping a safe distance from the waters. He is too confident. I have a bad feeling about this. Why does he keep advancing despite what happened to the other beak? Lid fought back the temptation of using all the extra mana from the old energy in one go, limiting to a single plague arrow. Instead of dodging it, Ertu stood up on its leg, laughing cruelly. When the plague arrow hit the beak's heart, Lid could see, thanks to live vision, that instead of attacking its vital organ, the dark energy was being assimilated by Ertu's core. Her! Did you really think to be the only one that had mastered dark magic? Now die! Ertu jumped forward, and before Lid could take advantage of its inability to dodge in midair, 4 rock formation erupted abruptly from the ground, right where Ertu's paws were going to be. That way, the beak was able to move forward once more, his speed further increased by the 4 rocks' borrowed momentum. In less than a second, Lid was robbed of his opportunity to counterattack, while Ertu had turned into 1-ton bullet. To evade the attack, Lid had not only used air fusion but also to roll forward. The beak was too fast for a real dodge. His only option was to pass under it. After that point, things got worse. When Ertu landed, instead of creating a crater, the ground stretched under its leg like a trampoline, allowing it to resume the chase without a second of delay. What in the world? You can't do that with earth magic? Lid bit his lower lip hard, cursing his own ignorance. He was a self-taught after all. The only knowledge he had about true magic was what he discovered experimenting by himself. Clearly, the beak was a natural at magic and had refined its mastery over earth through the years, aptly adapting it to the best hunting techniques. Making it a split-second decision, Lid kicked the ground with its leg while using all the mana he could infuse himself with earth magic, boosting his defense. Thanks to the clean cut in his previous trajectory, Lid got only grazed on the chest from Ertu's claw. Yet it was enough to rip off his chest protector and graze the underneath skin. Lid instinctively used light fusion to stop the bleeding and gain a healing factor. The mid-air strike had messed up the beak's tempo, so after the second jump it was forced to stop. Lid used that moment of pause to activate Soaring Hawk and take flight. The opponent was clearly superior. He had almost run out of options. No escape! Ertu roared, shooting a rain of rock debris against him. Lid mimicked Gerda, using air instead of earth to generate a fast-spinning barrier that deflected the sudden attack. Yet his flight was interrupted and he started to fall down. It to grind, getting up on its back legs, ready to catch him. He could already feel in its mouth the crunchy taste of the prey's limbs. Lid was almost out of option. Almost. From that angle, Ertu could not notice that Lid's right hand was holding something, removing the stopper with a snap of the thumb. At the last second, Lid stopped in midair with float, while the substance in the flask kept failing and hit Ertu right on the head. Suddenly, the beak was blind, his eyes burning like a fire. A strong smell inundated his nose, making him sneeze and rendering it unable to sense Lid's presence anymore. When I bought this horrible perfume, my idea was to use it to make a beak lose my trace in case the worst happened. I never expected being forced to resort to such gamble. Luckily, Ertrude does not know about Solus, not her pocket dimension. The flask materializing out of thin air was something unconceivable for the magical beast, taking it by surprise. Itu was still roaring in pain, the paws rubbing his eyes, when he got stabbed from all sides. Thanks to the river, Lid's ice spear spell needed just a split of a second to strike. Lid waved his hands non-stop, sending a barrage of spears until Irtu's corpse was so riddled with holes that he could see through it. And even after that, he sent another one piercing its head, right between the eyes. I always hated how in horror movies, no one ever makes sure that the frigging monster is really dead, only to get backstabbed during the credits. You took a huge risk there, pretending to have lost control of the flight spell and going into free fall. Solus had objected to that last-minute contingency plan from the second Lid devised it, deeming it too reckless. What if the beak impaled you with a rock spear? What if, instead of waiting for you to come down, it had jumped to finish you off? That would have been merciful. Irtu was too cruel to do such a thing. Lid replied, without hesitation. It wanted me to feel despair and helplessness, to be conscious while it ripped me apart. In some ways, we were quite similar, both hell-bent on revenge and inflicting pain to our enemies. The only difference between us is that I would never allow my bloodlust to drive me crazy. Gerda and Irtu were a threat to my family. That's the only reason I come here. I prefer giving my enemies a painless death, even making Irtu's spell worthless, rather than taking the smallest risk they could harm one of my beloved one. Lid had just collected the two magical beast carcasses inside the pocket dimension when his body started trembling in pain. A familiar hot sensation rising from his manacore. Suprememagus, Chapter 35. Prizes. Not here, not now, Lid inwardly screamed. Until it's over, I will be a sitting duck. He knew that it was impossible to hold back the impurities refining process until he was back home. He had no choice but to offer no resistance, making it as fast and painless as possible. Soon, black ooze started being extracted from all his pores and orifices. Lid's eyes and throat were burning from the nasty feeling the impurities inflicted on their way out. Lid felt like a river of bile was coming out of his body. When it finally ended, he was kneeling, hands on the ground. A huge puddle of tar-like substance was below him, tainting the air with its putrid smell. Congratulations on evolving your manacore to deep cyan. Solus' voice was full of joy. You also should have lost at least a kilogram or two, judging from how much impurities you expelled this time. I can already feel the quality of your mana flow improving. My meals have never been so tasty. Deep cyan coughed some more impurities that got stuck into his throat. All these years, the hard work, even risking my life against not one but two consecutive magical beasts, just for the worst cyan core possible? He couldn't help but feel depressed and frustrated. I'm still below Nana's level, and she was born with that core. If she practiced my breathing technique, there's no telling how strong she would be. She could probably already topple mountains and split seas. With a pulse of dark magic, he banished all the impurities into nothingness. Look at the bright side. Thanks to the breakthrough, you should finally be able curing Tista. Isn't that what you wanted from the beginning? Solis tried to console him the best that she could. At that thought, Lee's mood lightened immediately. You are damn right. Sometimes I'm just a self-centered asshole. Sometimes, Solus sarcastically remarked. Okay, fine, most of the times. I let my hunger for power get the best of me. Happy now? Sol giggled. Despite having yet to use invigoration, Lid could already perceive the world around him more vividly than ever. The colors, the smell, the sounds, everything was different. It was like being born again and experiencing the world for the first time. Still feeling lightheaded, he splashed the river cold water on his face, trying to regain his focus. Suddenly, Lid could feel a shiver on the back of his head, his neck hair suddenly standing up. Lid abruptly jumped back on his feet, turning around to discover that the very same Rai from 2 years ago, was silently walking towards him. It had become bigger, its height at the withers reaching 1.6 meters, and its red fur had gained shades of white, dancing in the sunlight like a wildfire. Just trying the soaring hawk spell almost made Lid faint, so he was forced to cancel it while using Invigorate to regain his strength once again. Yet Lid's manacore was still unstable after the evolution process, and therefore unable to assimilate more energy. Damn it, I can only escape on foot. Sniffing his stress and fear, the Rai spoke. Fear not, Scourge, I mean no harm. On the contrary, I have come to give you my thanks. It was my duty stopping Irtu and Gerda, but you managed to precede me. It threw a magnificent deer he was carrying on his back at Lid's feet. Both the skin and the antlers were in perfect condition, aside from a single bite mark on the neck where it had been clearly broken. I notice you humans prefer them like this, since after eating the meat you can exchange the rest for those things you call money. Lee didn't feel much reassured. He decided to keep stalling while he was catching his breath and searching for the best possible escape route. So, you can talk too, huh? Why didn't we have this conversation 2 years ago instead of fighting? Stop eyeing for an escape route. If I really wanted to kill you, I would avoid useless talk and strike when you are at your weakest. I am not arrogant and cruel like Kirtu. I would not make the mistake of underestimating you again. As for your question, it was you that attacked me first. Also, do you know what happens when one of us speaks? Either the human faints or runs away. In both cases, they come back in numbers, even setting the woods on fire trying to kill us all. The Rai growled at the unpleasant memory. It relaxed a bit. Yeah, humans get scared easily. They think themselves all high and righteous and don't like when someone or something they don't recognize as equal threatens the status quo. By the way, sorry for the sneak attack, but you were big, scary, and destroying something really precious to me. A light of understanding lit in the Rice's eyes. You mean that annoying rock that now you wear at your finger? I see. Then it's my turn to apologize for damaging your property and trying to kick you out of the woods. I only wanted the noise to stop and you ceasing your attack. If I have to believe your words, why do you call me Scourge? Isn't that kind of offensive? Lit kept moving very slowly towards the fastest way home, one step at a time, like he was just shifting his weight from one foot to another while chatting. The Rice snorted, pretending not to notice it. It's no offense. You killed the king in the west, and with its life, you claim its title as well. That would make you the king in the east, I suppose. What's your title? Lit moved another step. The protector. My role is to keep both humans and an unruly magic beast at bay. It has a much better ring than mine. By the way, your majesty, I'm not interested in knightship, kingship, or messing with your turf. Feel free to take over Irtu's region or whatever it's called. I only hunt for my survival, not for sport or pleasure. And that's why you are still alive. Seeing that the human was too self-conscious about his weakened state, the rat gave up and turned back, walking towards the woods. Lit was still scared, yet had the presence of mind to stir the deer in the pocket dimension. As soon as the magical beast disappeared from its sight, Lit ran out of the woods, always making Solus look out for any possible menace. On south side, he changed into his usual clothing, dimming the claw rip on the chest, too unsettling for his parents. The closest he got home, the weaker he felt. The adrenaline rush was fading away. His body and mind were both battered from all that had happened. A splitting headache arose, making it difficult for him to think. When Lit finally arrived at the destination, he was too tired to speak or even walk on to his bedroom. He sat down onto the nearest chair, singing in relief, allowing himself to relax. The next thing he knew was that someone had put him into bed, and judging from the lightning, it was already night. He closed his eyes, pondering about. Tista and Eliza were still asleep. He decided to get up and prepare the breakfast for everyone, following his normal routine. It was in that moment that he realized how much had he changed overnight. Not only his body was brimming with strength, he could also perceive his own mana flow without the assistance of any breathing technique. Lit needed but a thought to start floating, managing to get out of the bedroom without making the wood creak. What had required so much focus just the day before now barely needed his attention. If a tier 1 spell has become so easy, what about your magic? Lit discovered that now he was able to use up to 6 spells at once without the use of any gesture or magic word to help coordinate them. Soon, many small vortexes were cleaning every nook and cranny of the dining room, the air in the room getting warmer by the second, while plates and cutlery floated in their place. By the time the table was laid, he had also finished washing and drying the floor. I have performed in less than a minute what usually took me half an hour. I have still a lot of time before having to wake everyone up. Solus, how do you feel? Now that I know you are all right, just peachy. But since you were referring to my abilities instead of my feelings, from the tone she was quite pissed off, Both the Soluspedia and the Pocket Dimension have been started expanding since your manacore stabilized. And what about you? Thanks for asking. Without any subtle hint from my side, the sarcasm was palpable. I'm still recovering from the huge scare you gave me yesterday, but I'll live. Sorry, I know you wanted me to escape from here too and not take unnecessary risks, but I couldn't run away and live in fear waiting for him to find and attack my family. I have lived too long in terror of my father back on earth to let the same thing happen again. I hope you can understand. Wanting nothing more than a change the subject to escape the awkward silence, Lit asked. What about Gerda's carcass? Can we take credit for the kill, or would it arise suspicions? There is no problem for Gerda. History is full of promising mages, even younger than you, killing a magical beast. Since there's no way to determine how strong it was, you can say that you ambushed it successfully. Here, too, on the other side, is more problematic. Not only his pelt is useless, making him only good for racking up merits, but its corpse shows signs of a spell that should be around tier 4 or 5, if not above. I'd say to save it for rainy days. After deciding what to do with the various carcasses, Lit used the remaining time to practice accumulation, while thinking about how to announce to his parents the treatment he had devised for Tista. Among all the things he had gained since arriving in the new world, his family happiness was still the greatest prize he could strive for. Suprememagus, Chapter 36, Out of Misery. Let's spend the next few days familiarizing with the changes in both his body and manacore. Healing with true magic was such different from the on-off effects that fake magic used, not to mention that the procedure for Tista required surgical precision. So, he used his new job as Nana's assistant to master once again his mana flow. Lit also personally reported to Count Lark the slaying of the magical beast via Nana's communication amulet. He gave the Count the chance to buy the perfectly preserved pelt, but for that he needed to get in touch with Celia. Lit had no idea how to tan and preserve such a magnificent fur, and neither did he know how much was it worth. So he had been forced to turn to the huntress for help, and Celia had accepted in exchange for 25% on the final price. The same fate befell the deer carcass. Its goal was to improve his relationship with the Count by earning merits for both of them. Through their confidential agreement, Lit would achieve merits because he had eliminated a threat to the county, while the Count would take the credit of the kill, being the one that had discovered Lit's talent and claiming to have entrusted him with the task. According to the law book in Lit's possession, a noble would get great fame and honors according to how his subjects performed. While they would get merits, the noble would improve his social status and importance to the king's court, raising his chance of achieving one more title with all the lands attached to it. It was a perfect win-win situation. Lit hoped to reel in Count Lark among his official backers. Having him as a patron was not enough. Being the Count a magic enthusiast, Lit was just one of the many talented youths he was sponsoring and nothing more. Lid wanted their relationship to develop further, so when he finally could leave the village, he would have someone to rely on. If there was one thing he had learned from Nana's story, was that a country bumpkin like him was in desperate need of someone trustworthy in an influential position. Count Lark was obviously thrilled at the idea that one of his proteges had achieved such a result. His hopes for Lid being accepted at the Lightning Griffin Academy skyrocketed. After so many failures, another success was on sight. It would further raise the Count's status in the eyes of the court. Killing a magical beast was good, but finding and developing the talent of a powerful mage was much better. Mages were the backbone of the kingdom, together with the military. After settling his business with Count Lark, Lid had souls helping completely rethink his concept of magic. So far, I use magic just like a club to kill and hit. But Gerda and Irtu have shown me that magic in this world it's not fixed as in dungeons and looting. I have been too narrow-minded. It's not only light magic that can act at cellular level. All kinds of magic can interact with matter, changing its properties. If Irtu could make the ground elastic, then I should be able to walk on water without freezing it. First, by altering its density. I need more advanced spell books to understand magic's limits. It's no wonder that Magus' talent increases exponentially after discovering true magic. Not only they start with a better curve than mine, so they can refine it to further heights, but they also become capable of replicating every single spell they saw until that point. While inventing a new spell takes a lot of time for a fake mage, finding the right balance between hand signs and magic words to obtain the desired effect, a true mage just needs to understand the underlying principle behind a spell to perform it. Thanks to his battle with the magical beast, Lid was able to quickly develop new spells by either imitating their tactics or experimenting by himself. After about 2 weeks, his body, mind and core were perfectly in tune, so Lid asked Eliza to go to the village with Tryon, giving him the opportunity to freely talk with his parents and Tista. Tryon and Lid were now in more neutral relationship. There were no hard feelings left, but no trust either. Lid had to simplify down a lot of the concepts to make them understand the risk of the procedure. He was not a doctor, but they were his parents, and Tista was their beloved daughter and his beloved sister. Lid would not proceed unless getting their informed consent, or at least the next best thing, since they understood very little of magic and nothing at all of anatomy. "How sure are you about this thing?" asked Raz, holding Tista as tight as he could, like Lid was going to take her away. "I'd love to tell you that everything will be all right, but I can't. I never tried something so big and complex. Tista, I worked years to develop this spell just for you. The only thing that I can promise is that I will give my best. I obsessed myself nights and days with it because I want you to be free and happy like anyone else, instead of being stuck in a cage, be it your body or this house, no matter how golden we can make it. I want you to be able to run in the wind, walk in the snow, to get out of the house, to meet people, make friends, maybe someday fall in love with someone and being loved back. I will do all I can to free you from these shackles, but I can do it without your trust and consent. Look them in the eyes, one at a time, to show them his resolve and determination. Tista escaped her father's arms, hugging Lit tight. "Oh, Lit, when you talk like that, you sound more like that than a little brother," she said, crying. "Of course I trust you. You have always been by my side, taking care of me, even when I could do nothing but stay in bed all day. You worked so hard, giving me so much. Food, clothes, you even invented the rocking chair for me. Mom, Dad, I want to do it. Whatever happens, I could never regret having trust in my little brother." Without saying a word, Raz and Elena joined her in the embrace, all of them sobbing together, even Lit, so fond of their bond and so scared to lose one of them at the same time. After Lit calmed down, he could finally start. On paper, the treatment was simple. By using invigoration in real-time imaging of Tista's body, Lit would use light and dark magic in sync. Dark magic would destroy the damaged cells that composed almost half of Tista's lungs, while at the same rate, light magic would enhance the healthy cell's ability to multiply, instantly replacing the lost organ tissue. But even with his limited knowledge in medicine, Lit could see many underlying problems. The destroyed cells would release toxins and impurities in Tista's system, and if they accumulated too much, she could die of shock or organ failure. Also, regenerating a vital organ like the lungs was a delicate process that would consume lots of her strength, and she hadn't much to begin with. So Lit had decided to take things slow, treating only a minimal part of her lungs to begin with. Then he would use his control over her mana flow to expel from her body all toxins and impurities the dead tissue would release and give her some time to recover before attempting another session. During all the process, he took care of her eating and resting properly to the point that Lit skipped hunting and magic training, only keeping his job with Nana to have a steady source of income while Tista was resting. The whole procedure took over a month, but thanks to all his painstaking efforts and meticulous bordering anal retentive preparation, everything went well. In some respects, even too well. After the treatment, Tista manacore had gone from light orange to yellow, and according to Solus, it kept evolving over time. "Seems your sister was quite talented, but her illness prevented her core from properly growing." "That's good," Lit nodded. "As soon as she completely recovers, I can bring her to Nana to learn magic. That way, she will be able to learn a trade and achieve a social status on her own. What comes next depends entirely on her." "Won't you teach her through magic?" "That would be idiotic. She is just 10 years old. If there's really some sort of global conspiracy and control over magic, that would mean putting her in danger. She deserves to finally have some fun, to live instead of just surviving. I won't drag her into a beehive unless that's what she wants." Lit made sure that everyone in the family understood the importance of keeping Tista's recovery a secret. Lit was still a no one. If the rumor spread it, nobles, or other mages could hunt them down to get their hands on the procedure. Despite they regretted being forced to keep trying in the dark, they accepted wholeheartedly. None of them was stupid enough to endanger such a hardly achieved happiness just for bragging. Since according to Nana there was a chance for Tista of healing by herself with her growth spurt, they decided to stick with that version and claim it to be a miracle of nature. Lid had got to the point of developing a spell to alter the results of Nana's Vinireratu so that when she checked on Tista she would still appear ill but slowly improving. This time he would not sleep on the details. Tista had to put a facade every time Tryon was around, but she soldered it up bravely. Being sick was a second nature to her. Sometimes she even fooled Lid and her parents with her acting. But whenever she could, she would walk with Lid through the Tron woods, going together at his secret clearing where she could finally be free to run, swim in the river, sing and dance at her heart content. Lid didn't regret even one moment spent with her instead of practicing magic or refining his manacore. Those things were of secondary importance to him. He had started practicing magic only because of his hunger for power, to put this new world to the test before committing suicide again. But then he had fallen in love with his new family, and magic had become a tool instead of a purpose. And that purpose was laughing and jumping around in front of his eyes. Lid couldn't and wouldn't hold his tears. Wherever you are, Carl, I hope with all my heart you too have found someone to love and to protect. I love you, little brother, and no matter how distant we are, you'll always be with me. A few months later, Lid received an invitation from Count Lark to join him for a day at his manor as his esteemed guest. Suprememagus, Chapter 37. The Invite from Count Lark. The whole thing happened in an odd fashion. Lid received a letter instead of a hollow call. Despite being addressed to him, it was delivered at Nana's house. Being the host, Nana took the liberty of reading it before handing it to him. She was just concerned for Lid's well-being, of course. The letter said in a perfect penmanship, Dear Lid, thanks again for slaying the monstrous magical beast. You have served the county of Lustria and deserve to be rewarded accordingly. To this end, I would like you to join me in my manor in 10 days since receiving this letter. We have much to discuss. I urge you to contact me as soon as you can via Lady Nerea's communication amulet. Count Tranquil Lark. What does this mean? Lid asked Nana. It sounds so serious to be ominous. It doesn't even seem something of a joyful and spirited person like the Count would write. Nana nodded, eager to avoid the outrageous accusation of being noisy. I can smell good news and bad news. The good news is that isn't anything serious. Despite the somber tone worthy of payment order, Lark used a letter. This means it's nothing urgent or important since he could afford to wait for the delivery and the reply. The bad news is that all the above stinks of formality and etiquette. I fear that you are in for a whole day of boredom while attending all the official businesses regarding your prize and whatnot. As I always say, little imp, no good deed goes unpunished. That's my line, Lid inwardly screamed. Not only you open my mail, you even steal my stick. Even the following hollow call was awkward. Count Lark was too calm and composed, managing to not make any questions about magic to Lid, nor losing his monocle, not even once. After hearing that Lid had accepted his invite, he stated that his personal tailor would stop by later and take Lid's measurements, and that he would send his stagecoach on the set date 1 hour after dawn in front of Nana's house. Then the Count politely but promptly ended the call, saying he had many things to attend. For Lid was like talking to a complete stranger. The tailor arrived less than an hour later. He didn't give Lid any mean look or nasty remark. On the contrary, he somehow recognized him at first glance, complimenting him for his height. Despite being only 8 years old and a half, Lid was already over 1 meter and 35 centimeters high, and in the county of Lustria, any man above 1 meter and 75 centimeters was considered tall. Keep growing up so fast, and soon you'll be as tall as the Count, young man. After the men left, Nana whistled in surprise. Good gods, I know him. That's the tailor that personally prepared the dresses for the Lark's family. Even worse than I thought. This occasion must be something really big, like being invited to a ball kind of big. This one of those rare moments when I'm happy not being part of high society anymore. Prepare yourself for long, awkward silences, insufferable small talk, and being showed around like some kind of exotic beast. Lid spent the next 10 days in his usual routine. Obsessing about Nana's words was pointless, since he had already taken those things in consideration when he decided to tighten his relationship with the Count. Except dancing, of course. Lid had always hated dancing, even back on Earth, mostly because of his two left feet. But even that wouldn't worry him much. There was no way for him learning cards dances in so little time. Even if he managed to find a book about it and added it to the Soluspedia, knowing was not doing it. He would still need to practice. He could only suck it up and endure. When the fated day came, a luxurious stagecoach stopped in front of Nana's house. It was all white, with the decors painted gold, drawn by 4 snow-white stallions. A valet descended, bowing to Lid before giving him a small wooden box. My lord, would you like to change into your new outfit before getting into the stagecoach, good sir? So much respect was dumbfounding for Lid, so he bowed back without a word before going into Nana's living quarters to change. He came out wearing deep blue velvet pants over hard leather shoes, a snow-white silk shirt, and a blazer matching with his pants, with the Count's family crest gold embroidered over his heart. Damn it, I'm probably wearing more money than my family's farm is worth. Judging from the crest, I guess Nana was right. He is going to introduce me to someone, and he needs that someone to know who I belong to. Lid was alone on the stagecoach. After opening the door for him, the valet went sitting beside the coachman. The ride lasted over half an hour. Despite the horse's remarkable speed, having nothing to do, Lid spent the whole time using accumulation. His deep cyan manacore had yet to change by even a shade. It definitely needed more work. When the stagecoach finally stopped, Lid looked out of the window only to discover they were just at the gates of the estate. 2 fully armed soldiers talked to the coachman, inspecting inside, above, and below the stagecoach before letting them pass. Going at full speed, armed to the teeth guards, a full check on the coach. Maybe Nana was wrong. This looks more like pressing by the second. Once inside the gate and beyond the high grey walls, the stagecoach slowed down, allowing Lee to take in the full manor view. The park around the manor extended as far as the eye could see. Their air smelled of cut grass, flower beds, and finely trimmed bushes adorned the cobblestone paths that went across all the park. Halfway between the gate and the manor, there was a plaza surrounded by benches, and at its center a huge pedestal with a marble statue of someone that Lit assumed had to be either the first Count Lark or an ancestor of which they were proud of. The manor itself was bigger than he imagined, extending for at least 3,000 square meters, divided into a main building, a left and a right wing, forming a reversed U shape. It took almost 5 more minutes to actually get to the manor entrance. The more he looked around, the more he could feel something was amiss. One of the greatest changes happened after Lit Manacore evolved to Cyan was that alongside his 5 senses, also his instinct had greatly improved. He was able to sense hidden dangers like with the eye, and to more easily grasp someone's real demeanor and intention. So he didn't miss that there were too little servants around, and those few he managed to spot had all tense expressions. A butler in a white and deep blue livery welcomed him with a deep bow. The Count asked me to apologize on his behalf for not personally receiving you, magically. His lordship also tasked me to bring you to his private quarters as soon as possible, where he will explain everything to you. The butler's poker face was impeccable, but Lit could have cut the atmosphere with a knife. He followed the butler until a double-door room guarded by 4 soldiers. Looking through the windows, Lit could see that there were even more guards on the outside, patrolling the windows and the glass doors leading to the park. Inside, he found the Count nervously pacing around. 2 youths were sitting on an armchair, and both were showing signs of anxiety, either tapping their feet on or fiddling with their hair. Count Lark hadn't changed much since the last time he saw him in person. He was in his mid to late 50s, around 1 meter and 83 centimeters tall, with a thin build that made him appear even taller. The Count had thick black hair with streaks of gray, a short trimmed goatee of the same color. His inseparable black rimmed monocle was attached to his breast pocket with a blue silk string. As soon as he saw Lit, his somber demeanor returned to be filled with enthusiasm. "Good gods, Lit, you are finally here!" The Count shook his hand with such vigor that Lit thought he was actually trying to crush it. "But where are my manners? Allow me to introduce you to my beloved children." The 2 youths stood up and extended their hands in turns. "This is my 3rd born, Jaden. He is also next in line to become Count Lark. Hopefully, it should happen many years from now." Lit shook his hand. Jaden had a firm but gentle grip, physically resembling his father, except being almost 10 centimeters shorter and with a much more muscular build. He was in his early 20s with pitch black hair and goatee. "And this is my 4th born, Kayla. This young beautiful lady is almost 16 and ready to make her debut at the king's court. They are the only family I have left." Kayla was a petite girl 1 meter 53 centimeters high, with flaming red hair with shades of gold and emerald green eyes. She was wearing an emerald green day dress that highlighted her hair and eyes. She fitted the Count's bill, except for the beautiful part. She wasn't really well endowed, as lit taste, and despite all the makeup she wore, it was impossible to hide such a bad case of acne. And even without that issue, he would have considered her pretty at best. Kyla offered him her hand, the palm facing downward. Lit didn't need his etiquette book to know that she was expecting a hand kiss. It was awkward for him. He never did such a thing, even for his past girlfriends, when things had got almost serious. Luckily, after being dead and reborn twice, having faced killers and magical beasts, it would take much more than that to embarrass him. So he made a small bow while giving a short peck on her hand. "It's a real pleasure and an honor for me to meet you all," Lit said, following the etiquette. "Now, please, your lordship, could you explain to me the reason of my summoning?" The more he saw and heard, the less he understood. Lit couldn't figure out why the Count was giving him all those useless details, and why he had hand-tailored dress he received was so similar to what Jayden was wearing. The Count facepalmed himself. Of course. I'm sorry. I'm still so shocked by the recent events that my head doesn't work properly. Let me explain. I called you here because I need you saving our lives. My wife wants to kill us all." Suprememagus, Chapter 38, Dysfunctional Family. "I beg your pardon?" Lit was flabbergasted. "Dad, how many times I have told you to start explaining things from the beginning, not the end." Kayla rolled her eyes. Yes, my dear, you see, when I was Jaden's age, I got married. It was an arranged marriage, with the purpose to join the resources of the Lark and Gishel households that back at the time were both in dire straits, to get out of the insane debts that our profligate parents had left us. The financial side of the business was a success. Between our combined annuities and by selling some of the residual assets, I was able to have enough capitals to invest in the right businesses. Long story short, our families went from almost broke to being again two of the richest of the dukedom. And that's when everything fell apart. My wife, Koya, had never been kind or lovely to me. We were just business partners. We never had a common interest or ideal. But until we got our money back, at least it was bearable. After that point, our marriage was purely for show, and aside from when she asked me to attend my marital duties, we had no intimacy. I got 4 children from her, after all, and even got them tested with blood resonance magic to be certain they were actually mine. I might be a little airheaded, but I'm not that naive. Both Jaden and Kayla become bright red after 2 their years. That, too much information. Stick to the facts, please. This situation is already embarrassing as it is. Don't add oil to the fire. Jaden said, but the Count was inflexible. To be able to help us, Lid needs to understand what kind of woman we are facing. Or do you want to underestimate your mother again? At those words, Jaden lowered his eyes and sat back down. Lid was really interested in the blood resonance magic, but he kept the question for later. Things were already confusing enough already. Where was I? Oh, yes, right after our households got back on their feet, Koya soon became restless. She was obsessed with us getting more titles, more annuities, and more lands, to the point that she took part in the court's power games and intrigues, trying to make allies to weaken our neighbors and take over their lands. But after working hard for more than 20 years, I was content with what I had. 4 beautiful children, a rich and prosperous household, a thriving county. I just wanted to slow things down and enjoy the life I had built, while expanding my power and influence through hard, honest work instead of underhanded schemes. Of course, she was furious. All her plotting was useless without my consent. After all, I wasn't married into her family. She was married into mine. After being the one that did all the work, I kept the biggest share of the profits. At that point, somehow, our constant arguing and mutual spite started affecting my firstborns. I don't know if it happened because they were born when I was still too busy to give them the proper care and attention, or if they just got more from their mother's side rather than mine. Only the gods know. My eldest son, Laurent, started taking for granted his status as my successor, neglecting his duties and doing nothing but drinking, gambling, and chasing skirts. My second born, Laika, had always been a problematic child. She was never content with what she had, always wanting more toys, more dresses, more jewelry. Nothing was enough for her. As my constant fights with her mother continues, she becomes angry with everything and everyone, throwing fits of rage for the smallest things. She started beating the servants on a daily basis. I lost count of how many they ran away from this house because of her. Between Laika and Laurent, it was like there was a competition about who would make me monthly spend more money trying to cover up their misdeeds and compensating their victims. I tried sending Laurent to all military academies I could find, hoping that some discipline would straighten him up. But he always managed to get dishonorably discharged in a few months, if not weeks. My last resort was giving him the position of responsibility in the household, but he would either not attend at all or show up dead drunk. But when I discovered that he had begun not only deceiving maidens with promises of marriage, but also taking them by force, I decided that enough was enough. I publicly disowned him, stripping him of his titles and annuities, leaving him enough money to live an honest life. If he quit gambling, of course. I also told him that the next time he defiled a girl, he would be judged by like any other scoundrel and pay for it. At those words, Lee thought about Orpal for the first time in over 3 years. He should be away for at least another couple of years. Maybe, if I decide to take part in this episode of Game of Spades and we survive, I can have the Count trace and eliminate him for me. That would be nice. I hate loose ends. After a short break for a glass of water, Count Lark continued his story. My wife was outraged. For her, Laurent's crimes were just boyish pranks that we would indulge and forgive. But it was the Lark household that he was dragging into the mud. He was throwing away my money with gambles and loan sharks. Not to mention that my reputation had become that of a corrupt and profligate noble, even if somehow I didn't have any decency or honor in me. How could I entrust my life's work to someone that would dilapidate it in less than a generation? Have I ever told you why I appreciate magic so much? It's because mages and nobles are so similar and yet so different. They both hold the power that allows them to destroy or save lives with a single word, to influence their surrounding just by being there. I consider magic superior because a mage's might comes from studying and discipline, and that means that he knows and understands the values of his power and the consequences of his action. Nobles, instead, get that power as his birthright. They take it for granted, and some live their whole lives considering perfectly natural for them to be superior, a higher existence. That's why so many of us end up abusing our status and authority. But I disagree. After expelling Laurent from the family, Koya wouldn't listen to reason, and neither would Lika. She really loved her brother, and after he was kicked out, she became even more angry and violent. The Count's eyes turned watery. He had to remove his monocle to wrap them with a handkerchief. Have you ever heard about all those stories about nobles killing and maiming commoners for trivial reasons? Well, she turned out to be the living embodiment of all those stories. And when I discovered what she had done, the body count was already over a dozen. I had no choice but to disown her too, pleading the king for mercy and losing a lot of my accumulated merits in the process. Despite everything, she is still my daughter. My wife was brought to the brink of insanity, saying that it was all my fault, and so she left the house for good, returning to the Gishals. At first I thought that being apart would allow her to regain her senses and come back. After a while, though, I really enjoyed the peace and quiet and hoped she would never return. But then I discovered that she had brought with her our disowned son, breaching my trust with the blatant flouting of the king's law. At that point, I applied for the marriage to be annulled. Otherwise, after my death, she could reinstate them as family members, if not even as heirs of the county. The annulment process would take a while, but I was certain to have settled that matter. In the following weeks, I started to feel weak and feverish, and despite all Genon's assurances, my personal magician, I could tell that something was wrong. No cold ever felt like that or lasted so long. So I started skipping my meals in secret, eating only fruits that I picked up myself. And guess what? My symptoms faded away. Only then I remembered that Genon was from my wife's side of the family. She had hired him personally, and so she did for more than half of our staff. After firing everyone she had brought in the house, I hoped to be finally safe. But then, even Kayla and Jadon fell ill. I would have never imagined she would harm her own children just for not agreeing with her. At that point, I was in a dire need of a magical aid. But who could I trust? Competent magicians are hard to find, and at this point, I don't trust anyone anymore. Who knows who may actually be sent by my wife or one of her associates. That's why, when I sent you the letter with the help of my personal secretary, a man that I know and trust from decades, I couldn't call for Lady Nerea's help. Without her, the whole district of Lutia would fall apart. Not to mention, it would be a sign of weakness. Who would entrust a county to a man incapable of managing his own house? Nana have more than once assured me that your healing skills are on par with her. And having killed a magical beast, I'm pretty confident that you are already more competent than Genon. who graduated in a minor academy only thanks to his father's money. Lid closed his eyes, trying to assimilate all that information at once to decide his next course of action. Great, I'm in a dead end, he thought. If I say no and he survives, I lose everything I built so far. If I refuse and he dies, not only all my efforts for making him into my backer will be for naught, but this wannabe Cersei strikes me like someone that after getting rid of her husband will wipe clean all the traces of his existence, and that includes me. Unless she is deaf, blind, and dumb, she is bound to know how much the Count has invested in me. That puts all my family in danger. And I definitely don't want this Laurent guy to come any closer to my mother and sisters. Feeling cornered, he had only one doubt. I consider myself a good healer and hunter, your lordship, but I don't see how can I help except by keeping you safe and healthy for the time being, of course. But that would be just stalling for time. If you don't have a way to make your wife healed, it could go on for years. No, rest assured that it won't. As soon as the marriage is annulled, she will not be able to make demands anymore about the Lark household, unless I am sorely mistaken. By that time, she will be knee-deep in troubles caused by our own disowned son and daughter, and for violating the king's law by bringing them into her family despite being marked as a living shame. Her only way out is to get rid of me, Kayla, and Jadon, to make my will null and void, remaining the only inheritor alive and restore Laurent and Koya's status. I just need you to keep us alive until the king signs the annulment documents. Lead Mind was spinning at full gear, consulting with Solus to make sure to keep all his bases covered. That can be done, but I have some demands that I would like your lordship to agree with before accepting. From their expression, it was clear they didn't expect such a request, yet the Count nodded without hesitation. To be able to protect you, I need to move inside your house until the matter is resolved. But of course, that's why you wear the family colors and crest. That dress identifies you with one of my personal aides, second in authority only to me and my children. Good to know, Lee thought. That explains why me and Jadon have almost matching clothes. And I am deeply honored for it. But if I agree to help you, your wife could target my family too in retaliation. If I move in, I might need for them to come along for their safety. And someone has to take care of the farm, or they will have nothing to return to. Count Lark facepalmed himself. Oh, Lit, I'm so sorry for doubting your loyalty. For a moment, I thought you were going to refuse. You are right. I missed the possibility. I will make them come here as soon as possible. They will be my honored guests as well. I will send my sharecroppers to tend to your farm until everything is settled. Anything else? Yes, I need free reign within your household. If your wife still has insiders, if not spies still here, I will need to resort to unpleasant means to serve them out. We cannot expect them to confess out of the goodness of their hearts. Count Lark took out a handkerchief, cleaning his already shiny monocle to ease his nerves. Do you mean torture and interrogation? Do we really need to resort to that? Desperate times calls for desperate measures, but it should not be necessary. I can easily disguise as your guest while keeping a low profile. After all, no one knows who I am except the butler. The Count started to cough up loudly. Jadon and Kayla looked at each other before turning towards Lit. Actually, everyone knows who you are, Jordan said with an awkward smile. Well, but that doesn't mean they know what I am capable of. When he saw them exchanging another look while the Count kept coughing non-stop, Reed felt compelled to ask, "They don't, right?" Kayla cleared her throat before standing up, prompting him to follow her. "A picture is worth more than 1,000 words. I think you need to see how you are depicted in the painting hall." Suprememagus, Chapter 39, Setting Up the Board. "How am I what?" Lit yelled, having lost his cool for a second. Now it was the Count's turn to become red up to his ears. It followed Kayla, resisting the urge to demand for her to move faster. All this situation had come completely unexpected and was heavily weighing on his mind. Since he had heard of the painting, Solus hadn't stopped laughing, projecting in his head famous statues like the David of Donatello or the Perseus by Antonio Canova, but she replaced the facial features with lids and switched Medusa's head with the big swan, grinding on his nerves. "I swear that if the Count had me drawn naked or something, I'd kill him faster and more cruelly than his psycho wife ever could." Luckily for the Count, that wasn't the case. The painting was quite big, 1 meter large and 1.5 meters high, and represented the Beak standing on his feet with glowing red eyes in a dark forest, occupying the center and the left corner. Lit was drawn while facing the magical beast, offering only the left profile to the viewer. His small body occupied only the bottom right corner, engulfed in a magical aura. His left arm and hand were set ablaze, supposedly because of the fire spell he was casting. The perspective and the darkness-filled background made the beak seem big and terrifying like a dragon, while it appeared as the only element of light, his face filled with courage and determination. The enormous stuffed body of the beak was placed a few meters to the right, half hidden in an alcove to show the visitor the ending of the story depicted in the drawing. Well, it's not that bad, they thought. It's not the tacky horror I had imagined, and I'm not even idiotically beautified. That's my actual face. Solus, is it me? Or I look kind of handsome? "Well, I don't know," she replied. "It's definitely a version of you that doesn't glare or frown all the time. Most importantly, he doesn't look like he's there because he had lost a bet, like you do when you watch yourselves in the mirror." Lit sighed in relief. At least he wasn't portrayed in his birthday suit or in some kind of arrogant or overbearing pose. That would have been really embarrassing for him. "What's the problem with the painting?" Lit asked, scratching his head in confusion. "The problem is that my father showed it to every guest, servant, and passerby that was willing to listen to him, recounting how you single-handedly defeated the malevolent beast in an epic battle of magic and wits," Jadon answered. "That's quite an accurate recollection of the events, albeit entirely made up," Solus commented. "The Count would make an excellent storyteller." Lit dismissed Jadon's worries with a wave of a hand. "You are overthinking it. No one actually witnessed the fight. The pelt is almost completely intact, and everyone knows about Count Lark's obsession with magic and sponsoring promising youths. They would more likely believe that Either I lucked out on that, the Count gave me some help, and is trying to lie me into a hero. No offense, your lordship. None taken, the Count replied. So, do you like it? He was itching of impatience, waiting for Leeds' reply. What's not to like? He shrugged. I'm not an art expert, but it seems well painted. Both me and the beak are depicted realistically. The only question I have is how could the artist know my... Then Leeds' eye noticed the painter's signature in the bottom left corner. It was a squiggly line, but with a leap of imagination one could actually read the name Treacherous. Lee turned around abruptly just in time to get a glimpse of Count Lark jumping with joy before regaining his composure. Having cleared that issue, they silently returned to the Count's private quarters before resuming their conversation. Lid pretended to be casting a fake magic spell while actually casting his hush spell. It would create a spherical air vortex that would make eavesdropping by conventional means impossible, by distorting the sounds coming out of the room. That will prevent anyone from listening. As I was saying, taking everything in account, no one would actually believe such a story. Of course, the fact that everyone knows my face complicates things, but a covert operation is still feasible. For how I see it, we have two options. Option 1, I pretend to not live up to what the Count said up until this point and act like a half-baked magician. This will give the enemies inside and outside the house the confidence to carry on with their plans, like I am not even here. It should make easier to capture whoever tried to poison you, but it also means that the assassin will embolden and attack more often. Consider that such person or persons could be a small fish, hence even eliminating him or her would do us no good. They would be easily replaceable. Option 2. I play it big and loud, confirming all the rumors about me that should put your wife on alert, forcing her to reconsider her plans and become more cautious. That would mean a temporary peace, but the next assassination attempt would be conducted by a skilled person that would strike only after careful preparation, giving him or her a high chance of success. At the same time, it wouldn't be easy to find another trusted mercenary on such short notice if we manage to eliminate the first one. Both paths are filled with thorns and dangers, so it's up to you to decide. The room fell into silence. The three nobles were pondering about how they wanted to bet their lives. Isn't there a third option? Kayla asked. If you can find one, sure, I'm open to suggestion, Leeds shrugged. I say that our best option is discretion. The Count has made up his mind. We aren't trying to beat Koya at her own game. We just need to stall for time. If we manage to survive on our own until now, with Leeds' help, things should be much easier. Let's keep our real strength hidden as long as we can, so that when she finds out the truth, hopefully she won't have enough time to take the best countermeasure she could. I know her well. She is cold and calculative, but under pressure she is much better at taking orders rather than giving them. It happened multiple times in the past, and now is not any different. She could have pretended to accept my decision to stay by my side despite our differences. That way, even the first poisoning attempt would have succeeded. Since my suspect arose mostly because I knew she wouldn't stand idly while losing the status and money that the title of Countess gave her. But as always, Koya's bad temper got the best of her. and she made a mistake after the other. So, what's our next move? Until everything is resolved, don't hire new servants. It's too risky. Lead said. Aside from that, there is not much we can do. We are still on the defense. The only thing that comes to my mind is to introduce me to your staff, one small group at a time. Those who are still loyal to you will look at me with curiosity and benevolence. With those who are your wife payroll may feel pressure and lose their cool. It's a long shot, but it's better than nothing. Lee's plan was actually more complex than that, but it wasn't something he could share. Between his life vision and Solus mana sense, he would take note of everyone whose physical strength exceeded their occupation requirements or had at least a yellow mana core. Our best bet would be a male, middle-aged with a strong body and mana core. It would make the perfect suspect, Lee thought. Why a male? Solus asked. Because men are physically superior even in this world. A woman would better suit a honey trap, but we already know that the Count doesn't fiddle with maids. Middle-aged because it should be someone, the Countess, planted long ago to let him gain the trust and authority necessary to feel freely and move in the manner. And a strong manacore would be a great tell for a hitman. I doubt anyone with enough talent for magic would settle for a manual labor job without a really good reason. Also, if something magic related happens, it would be the perfect diversion, since women would always be the prime suspects being naturally more talented. When the Count had told him to have fired half of the staff, Lid had deluded himself into believing that would make things easier for him to control. But reality begged to differ. The remaining personnel still amounted to over 50 units, and that was only after not taking into account gardeners and stable workers, since they did not have access to the main building. 54 persons is more than the whole village population. It took me hours just to meet them all. None of them had shown signs of stress meeting him, making his official plan a complete failure. The silver lining was that he had actually found possible suspects. The problem, though, was that there were too many. Lid had found among the staff 16 people that stuck out for their physical or magical abilities. Yet, he had no way of performing a background check outside directly asking them or their colleagues, but that would make his intention too obvious. He couldn't rely on the Count or his children for that. They barely knew their names and roles in the household. He decided that for the time being, the best he could do was keep his own family in the dark. As long as he played his role as a weak magico, the safest place for them was the one further away from the eye of the storm. He kept thinking and thinking, but he couldn't find a way out. Damn it, I'm really starting to believe that this time I'm way out of my league. I'm no detective, just out of practice chemist that now practice magical arts. This is not a problem that I can solve by killing or burning stuff. The situation resembles more and more a freaking game of chess, and I hate chess. I suck at chess when the fight is fair, let alone when all I have is my queen, the king, and 2 pawns. Solus giggles was the first good thing he had heard the whole day. Well, if the board is so unfavorable, have you thought about cheating? Suddenly, Lid's stone ring turned to liquid, splashing on the floor before returning to the form of a marble. 8 little legs come out of the stone marble, making it resemble a spider that started to move in circles around Lid. Nice little trick, don't you think? Suprememagus, Chapter 40. Solo's Adventure. I wanted to give this a try since I gained the ability to change shape at will, Solus explained. It's amazing. What can you do in that form? The same as always. Store things and use magic, by consuming your mana. If you allow me to do it, obviously. Then what's the point? Last time we checked, our mind link was around 10 meters. Sure, I could plant and use you as a bug, but then I would need somehow to retrieve you without raising suspicions. How far can you move on your own? We are about to find out. Solo started moving fast, first on the floor, then up the wall, until she reached the ceiling. Then she moved on the opposite side of the room, putting 5 meters between them. So far, so good. I feel I can move even further. Lit opened the door of his room, checking with live vision to see if there was no one hidden in some corner or behind a secret passage he was unaware of. Then he let Solus get further away from him. She kept humming the entire time, making possible to Lee to determine how the strength of their mind link changed with distance. At 10 meters, it was perfectly clear, like she was still on his finger. After 20 meters, it became muffled. He could still share her senses and communicate with her, but it required focus. At 30 meters, her thoughts were barely a whisper. I don't feel so good. I'm afraid that this is my limit. If I get any further, I won't be able to receive your mana anywhere, and I will begin to consume my life force in order to move. My reserves are not depleted as when you first found me, but the idea of being all alone, bleeding energy at every step, frightens me quite a bit. Lit could understand her fear. She had already got very close to death once, and in order to survive, Solus had to pay a terrible price. If mana is the problem, let's see if I can do something about it. Lit created a string of mana with spirit magic and used it to connect to Solus. Suddenly, everything was clear again. He could even feel her little body perform a joyful dance. Solus was able to proceed swiftly until the distance between them was 50 meters, the new limit of spirit magic's range. Sending her mana over a further distance required increasing focus and energy consumption on its side. It was like casting and keeping active several spells at the same time. For Solus to reach the servant quarters, it required such concentration to become blind and deaf to whatever was happening around him, going into a meditative trance. This is completely unacceptable. I need to babysit the Count and his kids all the time. What would happen if we got attacked while I played the Sleeping Beauty? Not to mention how to explain to the Count my narcolepsy without either losing his trust or revealing Solus' existence. Lit tried to open his eyes to listen with his own ears instead of using Solus' senses. It didn't come easy. It was like pushing a car uphill. The slightest mistake and he would be back to square one. After numerous failures, Lit snapped. If finesse doesn't work, let's go brute force. Lit, forcefully awake in his room, was as he had left it, the door still barred from the inside since Solus had gone beyond his line of sight. He could hear and see again, but the burden on his mind and body was unchanged. He could feel his mana being drained, his mind slower than usual. It was like trying to do mental calculation despite a commercial jingle you couldn't get out of your head. The mind link was still there, but it was blocked. Seems, at this range, I can either use my senses or hers, not both. It's not great, but still an improvement. I won't have to fall asleep at the weirdest time at least. After closing his eyes again, Lit asked Solus to come back, and after her return, they planned their next move. In the following days, Lit would stay with the three nobles at all times, barricading themselves in the Count's private quarters and surrounded by guards. That way, from the outside, it would look like Lit's arrival had changed nothing, but appearances couldn't be more different from the truth. Lit would make them drink only water he conjured, and before letting them eat even a single bite of any food, he would use magic to search for poisons and detoxify them. He would also use Vinireratu, the light magic diagnostic spell, to cover up his use of invigoration, his body strengthening / imaging breathing technique, to check up their bodies for slow release poisons they could have ingested before his arrival or any relevant anomalies. The poison was mostly in the food, covered by spices and sauces, and the only anomaly he could find was Kayla's acne. Poor girl. This acne doesn't cover only her face, it covers also her back and shoulders. I guess for her debut in society, she will have to pick a dress that leaves a lot to imagination. But while it was seemingly holed up, he was actually checking on his suspects one by one to avoid useless energy expenditure. He would establish his mind link with Solus before attaching her to a plate, tray, or under a servant's collar. She would then travel to the kitchens in search of her target, and only then she would send a small burst of energy to signal Lit to start feeding her again. She would then follow the suspect during the day, hoping to catch him or her red-handed. Usually she would get nothing out of it, but just the gossip was worth the trip. Since the Countess left, so many bad things have happened, said a maid in her late 20s. Yeah. First someone tried to poison the Count and then he kicked out a lot of our friends. I get that he's scared, but that was unfair, said a valet that was barely 18 years old. Shut up, idiot, and thank the God we still have our jobs and references. This isn't a good time for slackers and whiners, replied harshly a chubby maid over her 40s. Personally, I have always considered her ladyship nuttier than a fruitcake, chimed in Poltus, the butler and head of the staff, that had welcomed Lit at his arrival. Always nagging to the poor Count and asking for money, but this time I think she may have a motive that it pains me to admit it's almost justifiable, he said, dramatically looking over his shoulder like someone that knows too much. What do you mean? What do you know? Soon, Poltus was hard-pressed to reveal his Jewist discovery. Isn't it obvious? I mean, who in his right mind would stand up for those two worthless scums? They are nothing but human-faced monsters. Not even the Countess would dirty her hands with that trash. I'm so happy they are finally gone. My daughter is getting lovelier by the day, you know. During the last year, I have spent every day in dread hiding her from that Laurent. Who cares about your daughter, old fogey? Spill the beans, said the chubby maid. A small crowd of servants had gathered up around him, and even if there was no one else around, he whispered like he was about to reveal a forbidden secret. I think that kid that just arrived in the Count's is the Count's fifth son. All the present gasped in astonishment. Think about it. Pitch black hair, very tall for his age, obsessed with magic. They are clearly made from the same mold. Otherwise, Why would the Count personally paint him and put the picture in the painting hall among his family members? Why would he send the family tailor to make him his dresses and ask the kid to join him in his time of need? A family must stick together. Soon the whole room erupted with shouts and chatter. That's why the Countess was so angry. It explains everything. Do you think he could be the next in line of succession? Poor Jadon. While everyone's imagination was going wild, Solus was really happy of being a magical construct at the moment. She was laughing so hard that she could barely keep her form. If she had been inside a human body, she would be rolling on the floor, hugging her belly and gasping for air. The gathering was going to last long, but luckily her Mark wasn't that much interested in gossip and started to move towards the servant quarters. Solus promptly detached from the apron she was hiding under and followed her quietly until she was able to latch on her shoe. The maid was one of the lead's prime suspects, a member of the personnel that had access to all the family's meals and with a physical and magical strength above the average. Not much, but it was all that they had. All the other previous suspects have been nothing but a bust. Someone would steal silverware, another had an affair with another staff member, but that wasn't what Solus was looking for. The young girl opened her door with a key and then walked in. All the staff's bedrooms were identical, 8 meters long and 6 meters large. There will be one bed next to the wall on the opposite side of the door and 2 more beds along the side walls. The only source of light outside of oil lamps would be a single big window, and each bed had a wooden chest where the servants could store their belongings. As soon as she was alone, the maid started grumbling out loud. Those idiots! All they think about is gossip and make everything related to Noble's relationship out to be sordid. Who cares who? I can't wait for this mess to be over. Since the staff was halved, I don't get to slack anymore. The Count has lessened our workload, sure, but with half the house to clean, now Pontus has double the time to check on our work. If I get any more demerits, that old bastard will take money out of my salary. Gods, I'm so tired. She closed off the curtains and then changed into her nightgown before going to sleep. Solus could only inwardly sigh. Guess this is just another bust. She really doesn't seem to be a cold-blooded killer. She is really cute, though, especially without all those baggy clothes on. I wonder if hers is the body type Lid likes, or if will indulge on these images. She chuckled. Guess not. Based on his memories, it's too soon for his body to have those urges, and his mind couldn't care less. Even when I told him I got into the woman's quarters, he didn't check my memories even once. He only listened to my report. Solus used the hush spell to prevent any noise to wake up the sleeping maid, adding a touch of dark magic to turn the room pitch black. Then she proceeded to open the chest, using a mix of spirit magic and her body shifting abilities. Picking up the lock was easy as a pie. While rummaging through the maid's personal belongings, Solus wondered about her life. It always feels so odd to be away from Lid. I'm so used to constantly hear his thoughts, worries, and memories that all this silence in my head feels really lonely. Even when he sleeps, his mind always keeps me company. After all these years, I still haven't figured out what he is for me, a companion, a host, a master, or rather my mother. He gave me a second life. After all, and my first happy memory begins with him. The only reminiscences I have before meeting him are filled with the fear of dying or losing myself. The search had given no result. There was nothing outside casual clothes, shoes, family mementos, and harmless mail between her and her loved one. According to our detective stories, the culprit should have with him or her a detailed letter from the instigator, money, a signet, a flask of poison, or whatnot. Being already in the room, Solis decided to also check the remaining beds and wooden chests, starting from the one on the left side of the room. It turned out to be even more bland than the previous. 2 down, 1 more to go. Solis opened the last lock, going through the clothes, the letters, and the trinkets containing in the last chest. She turned an old pair of shoes upside down when a hidden treasure fell into her hands. Well, well, what do we have here?